Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the latest in our webcast series. Today we're talking about data analytics and business intelligence. Are we approaching a tipping point? We're talking today about the impact of data on transformation. So welcome, my name is Dan French. I'm founder and CEO of Consider Solutions. I'm the unhappy looking one on the left. I do sometimes look happier. I'm very, very pleased to be joined by Hans van Ness, our COO. And Hans has many years of experience in data going back quite some time. So Hans, welcome.
Thank you, Dan.
So I'm going to get into this discussion. It's a 35-minute session. We hoped it'd be 30, but it's going to be 35 minutes in total. I'm just introducing some concepts. I'm going to share some of the insights from research and our own experience, and probably from your experience too, in terms of successes, but also talk about the challenges. We're going to talk about cracking the core data problem in business processes. And Hans is going to talk through a new data analytics strategy, a way of looking at the problem and how to kind of channel your efforts in 4 quadrants. And I'll come back with some thoughts for the road. As you go through, there are a lot of topics here, a lot of kind of keen questions. So if you've got things you want to ask, please ask questions as we go through. As the idea comes to your head, record the question. There's a Q&A panel in your GoToWebinar interface. So pop the questions in there as you think of them, and we'll endeavor to answer them at the end. If we don't have time to answer all of them, we'll answer the other ones by email. And if you've got a technical problem, use the same interface and one of our team will try and help you out. So, so that's what we're trying to do. In terms of context, many of you know us at Consider Solutions, so you know our approach. We're kind of business focused on world-class finance and operations. The left-hand side kind of shows what we mean by that, how to help the organization drive better business results, reduce the cost of operations, optimize cash flow, and have better risk management. And we deliver it through those pillars on the right. And you could argue that the data question applies to all the pillars, but we're particularly interested in business process transformation today. And many of you here on the call these are examples of some of the folks we work with. Very pleased to have you here. And these are the guys that ask us the challenging questions about which kind of give rise to these webcasts. So so we thank you for that, because it helps us, you know, keep sharp and dig into challenging received wisdom. So let's look at these insights, and there's some things which are obvious and some things are less obvious. So we all know this story, right? It's a great quote. But you know, if you have visibility to every transaction across our business, everywhere in the world we do business, what decisions would we make differently? Well, we all kind of sign up to that, and we believe we're on that road. The challenge is that in the kind of pursuit of data, today's reality very much is about use of data, very much for dashboards and performance indicators, and that's great. This is a little bit tongue-in-cheek because many of us have more KPIs now than we can shake a stick at. And it is fair to say a lot of folks I talk to aren't 100% sure on what some of the KPIs are really aiming to achieve. More importantly, whilst they might be communicating performance, are they helping us drive improvement? And so there's an interesting question here about the use of data in KPIs, but that's only part of the question. So that's kind of a little bit of pause for thought. You've probably all seen this research, and some say 70%, some say 80%, and it doesn't really matter because it's a worrying statistic, whichever number it is. And it certainly reflects my experience. Now, this is to say that in this case, 70% of digital transformations fail to deliver the value in the business case. Now, that's not just the absolute amount of value, it's the economic value for the business in the time we expected. And my experience has been quite often we don't deliver the value, organizations don't deliver the value they expect, but they very rarely deliver it in the time frame they expected. So this is kind of a very interesting point. And there's a number of reasons for this, which I won't go into all of them, but one of them is actually about data. So we all agree that data is a core enabler of digital business, and it's a core outcome of digitization. So we used to talk about people, process, and technology in every change, but now, and Gartner have done a good job here, we say, no, there's 4 things. There's people, process, technology, and data. So data is at the core of this. And we know that a lot of the transformation business value is really comes as an effect of having end-to-end seamless data on end-to-end transform processes. So if that is not available, then that's one of the reasons why you lose the value. But expectations are really high with data and analytics. So we all know this story. You know, we're told all the time that, you know, we can have all our data in, you know, in a fraction of a second, and so it's reasonable we should feel good about that. And the successes are there for us all to see. There's great examples of visualizations and correlations. There's great examples here about lifespan through the ages by country, the countries that consume the most alcohol. You know, so who knew that Moldova drank more alcohol than the Russians? We've got, you know, the best-selling music artists in the past 60 years. Who knew that Drake was a top-performing music artist? People who have vegetarian diets, and that spiral at the bottom is US reported COVID infections, and it's great stuff. It's amazing that these visualizations, you know, cause us to ask questions and to think. It's also dangerous because, as we know, correlation isn't the same as causation. And in business, we're looking for more than correlation. We're looking also for what's causing things to happen. So there's a kind of an identifiable challenge there. But we do know, and it's fair to say, we have cracked the visualization and correlation problem, and I think we'd all agree with that. We know we've got great tools and technologies to do that. But that's not the whole picture. So visualization and correlation is the column on the left. But when organizations are looking to get insight into managing core business processes and driving continuous improvement and working out how to allocate resources on a real-time basis, there's a lot more involved. So, yeah, we know what visualization and correlation is, and it's good stuff, and we want it. But on the right-hand side, there's a lot more involved. There's rules and algorithms on the data about processes, which are quite nuanced. There's the idea of focusing on process-oriented decisions and helping manage continuous process execution and continuous improvement. So, and we're really focused on the problem on the right. So I accept the problem on the left is cracked, but everyone we speak to is having challenges, cycle time challenges for the point on the right. So we're going to try and dig into why that is. Now, you will, if you've attended any of our webcasts before, you know I'm fascinated by cognitive biases, and my favorite cognitive bias is Dunning-Kruger effect, and even data can't beat that. And the Dunning-Kruger effect, for those of you who haven't followed it, is research from 30 years ago from psychologists that determined that intelligent people like us on this call, when faced with a problem or a domain we don't have deep experience of, we tend to have a very high degree of confidence in our opinions, judgments, and decisions. As we get more experience into doing something, getting into the detail, the nuances, we realize things are kind of gnarly, a little bit difficult, a bit nuanced, much harder than we thought, and we get a massive collapse in confidence, and we're wishing we never started. And if you're lucky enough to get to expert level, your confidence raises, but never to the level you had when you're a naive optimist. Now, that kind of gives rise to a lot of jokes, as we all know, but it's a really important thing, and we all suffer from it in every walk of life. But we've definitely got this issue with data and data insights, because the general assumption is it's doable. We have all the technologies. We should be 100% competent. Just get on and do it. And the received wisdom is that if we have all of the data from all the applications we have in our organization and external data, get all the data cleansed and harmonized, and then business folks can ask any and all questions and everyone's a winner, which is very seductive thinking, and it's, yeah, that's very nice. However, experience tells us it isn't that simple, and we really started to kind of dig into this a bit further. Our own experience reflected that, but McKinsey did a very interesting article in the Harvard Business Review where they said some pretty key things. So these points are pretty central. They said, despite the promise of AI and data and analytics and the massive investment in hiring data scientists and the associated technologies, it has not resulted in substantial business impact. And that's a bit of a shocker because we're spending a lot of money on this. The second point is kind of very valid, and everybody involved in trying to do process analytics agrees. There is a vacuum between those folks that understand data and algorithms and data semantics and those folks who understand a business process. There's a gap. And the data people don't understand a business process in sufficient detail, and the business process people don't understand the data in sufficient detail to be helpful in that either. So McKinsey's answer to that is what we need to do is add to the body of people we have, the expensive experts and rare expert knowledge we have, and add to it these analytics translators to sit in the middle. That's all very well, but it's a bit of an agricultural approach, given we're in an agile digital world. And add that to the fact that when you speak to the business experts in the business process areas you're talking about, even these folks do not have enough knowledge to have the questions, to have answers to the questions you have as a data scientist or a data expert. So that is a real problem. That's a catch-22. So if you don't believe me, here's a really simple little question. So if you were to ask me how many countries are in the world, I'd say, I don't know, but I can Google it, right? Well, it turns out I can't. Well, I can, but I get 6 different answers and I'm none the wiser. So what happens is I have to come back to you and say, you know, that question you asked me, what did you actually mean by how many countries are there in the world? And I then have to start getting to what decision you're trying to make on the back of that. I have to ask a lot of questions. In fact, we subscribe to this idea of 5 whys. If you ask 5 whys sequentially in any problem, you're quite likely to get very close to the root cause. So that's funny when it's countries, but what if it's customers or suppliers? How many suppliers have we got? How many orders have we got? How many invoices have we got? And let's say it's orders. So do you mean orders in the last year, in the last quarter, last month, last week, last day? Do you mean orders we've fulfilled? Or do you mean orders that we're waiting to fill? Orders we've got problems with? Orders where we have logistics issues? Orders we've been paid for? We've been part paid for? We've got a dispute on? There's so many nuances. And what question do you really want to answer? And this is one of the roots of why process analytics is tricky. It isn't just about the data as you see it in its core state in a database. So that starts to indicate what the core problem is. How do we crack it? Now, we did a little poll recently on LinkedIn about this, and there's a lot of research that indicates that today, despite all the data available in our organizations from our systems we have, as little as 20% of that operational process data is used to drive decision-making and actions, which is kind of worrying, really, and there's some reasons for that. But our poll asked some questions. We could only ask 4 choices because it was a LinkedIn poll, but it was just kind of interesting to see there wasn't really a massively compelling central answer to that. Was it senior management sponsorship of data? Was it the availability of the data? Was it defining a business requirement, defining the questions we're trying to answer, the how many countries question? Is it about the business behavior about data-driven decisions? And it begs you to ask the question, what's the real problem? What are we doing about it? Now, one of the organization responses, of which there have been many, is the chief data officer. So the chief data, and some organizations as chief data and analytics officer, you know, these folks are, you know, pretty key jobs, they're pretty significant jobs. And, you know, just with every new initiative or every core new focus, you know, we have chief transformation officers, we have chief digital officers, obviously chief information officers, procurement officers, and so on. I'm sure at one point we had a chief electricity officer, but the chief data officer is an interesting beast, right? And some of you are on this call. You know, the research says average job tenure is 2.5 years, which tells you that before you've really delivered the vision and value of what you're doing, there's a new job coming along. Now, anecdotally in the research, CDOs are saying that it's very difficult to demonstrate clear value in our role, clear business value. Now, when it's difficult to demonstrate clear business value in your job role, you want to have a really good think about what is it I'm actually trying to achieve here. And the new reality is the chief data officer or chief data and analytics officer isn't just about being the guardian of the data or the champion of data. It's about driving business transformation with data. And there's a lot of leaders in the business which are about that. So there's a really good little 10-minute interview between Sanjay of Genpact and Tom Davenport, who's a well-renowned transformation and data academic and researcher. He's MIT research fellow. He's a professor at Oxford University. You know, he's a smart guy, and he's done a lot of interviews as well on this. And he makes a great point. He said, we're moving on from this world now of collecting and organizing data we've been doing for the past 10 or 15 years. And we're trying to make sense of data, make use of it. And that's the hard bit. We thought it was hard collecting and organizing it, but it's really hard making sense of it. And if the CDO is about business transformation with data, We also know business transformation is about business processes, those end-to-end value streams, which means that CDO has got to be deep into process change, process transformation, data. It's no longer a technology issue, which is one of the reasons why this 2.4-year tenure is there. Now, it's kind of a bit of an aside, but it's an important part of the big challenge we've got today. So when we look at the challenge in detail, what's involved here? I'm just going to go through this quickly. So as is evidenced by the how many countries in the world discussion, one of the big challenges with process analytics to manage process execution, drive continuous improvement is, how do I get the process knowledge, the expertise, and best practice? We know end-to-end processes are key. If you don't have end-to-end visibility, you're solving symptoms, not problems. How do we understand how the process is organized and what's supported by what technology and what organization and all the rest of it? So you've got to understand that. You've got to have all that knowledge. You've got to be able to get all that. We've got to understand the data structure, the data model very, very deeply, the semantics, what it means, how things are related, how data is changed by events in those end-to-end processes. That's pretty key. And also how that data is actually stored in reality, because we believed at one point, maybe 10, 15 years ago, that we'd have one instance of every piece of data in one big common ERP, and that'd be wonderful. But now with our hub and spoke models, we've got the same data being stored in different systems and different databases, depending on its state in the cycle. So it's getting more complicated. And of course, you're back to that question about what's the real question you're asking. So this is a big challenge, and this is one of the things that we're focusing on right now. The second one is, what does it take to create the insight from the data? Right, here's a kind of a breakdown of the 6 areas you've got to deal with. Now, we know that visualization and drill down, we've cracked that problem. We know that data selection, extraction, harmonize, and transformation, we know we kind of cracked that in a different set of technologies. But the rules and algorithms is the hard bit. That's where we need the business insight. And the correlations and anomalies also relate to business. Which ones matter to the business? So that's kind of interesting. You can see a mismatch between the approaches we take at the outer edge of the onion and the inner edge. But it gets more complicated because in the systems and environments we're involved in, business processes in our organizations have variance. The data has variance and subtypes, some of which are business specific and some of which are technology specific. So SAP, for example, has some specific ways of describing data. The applications have different instances and extensions in different regions. We've got organizational issues. You put all of those different variants together, we've got a massive challenge trying to create insight on all that. And then challenge number 3 is, well, how do we do all that and get a time to value that is acceptable to the business? We're in a digital world, we're in an agile world, we need response really fast. The truth of the matter is today, with the best available technologies for data analytics, process mining, data mining, anything you like, you have still got to go through that hopefully agile circuit with some kind of center of excellence in the middle to get the requirements, the business questions, the business process expertise out of the heads of the experts, and it isn't one, it's lots. Configure technology to do that, make that work, go around several iterations as you have to refine it, and progress to deliver value, you measure on a calendar. And that's not good enough. We need to be able to measure on a stopwatch. So that's a pretty key issue. And when you talk about time to value, when we come back to business cases, we tend to look at the value, the economic value of a business case for a change, and there's a big number. But very important, in addition to the big number, is when it's happening. So a big number of business value in 3 years' time is worth a lot less than that same value delivered in 3 months' time. And and that's the essence of net present value as an accounting principle. So if I said to you, I'll give you $1,000 next September, and said to you, well, what would you like now if you didn't want to wait? It'd be a lot less than 1,000, because I might not have $1,000 next September. You might have lost contact with me. You might not need it then. You just know money in your hand is worth more. And that's the same with the business value we're delivering. The fourth piece is, with all of those other things, it still costs a lot of time, effort, and money to do this stuff. It's still, it's still a little bit agricultural. Despite the wondrous technologies we have, we're still missing the point. And then people say, yes, I agree we're missing the point, but won't artificial intelligence solve the problem? Because that really is, that's a solution to everything. And there was a great comment, and we've had an AI group here for 10 years, I think now, in Consider. And there's a great comment that says, the most worrying thing is when an executive wants to AI their way out of a problem they don't understand. And that's kind of a really important thing. So deep process understanding is critical whether or not you have AI. You've got the issues of data bias, correlation and causation, which happen whether it's AI or more traditional programmatic approaches. But the point about it is, it's not a silver bullet. It definitely provides some capabilities, and I'm not going to go into the details on the left in great detail. But one thing to bear in mind is, there are unintended consequences, and I'm sure you've all seen this picture, that a lot of the image recognition powered by AI still can't tell the difference between a labradoodle and a chicken nugget. Now, that's kind of funny, but if you couldn't tell the difference between a certain type of invoice and another type of invoice, that might be slightly more concerning. So I've kind of painted a picture here. There's a lot of challenges, and everybody I speak to who are running BI groups, data science groups, they kind of say the same thing. If we're just trying to visualize and correlate, that's easy. We can do that, and we can be very, very impressive. If they want us to understand the core business process, it's a challenge. So I want to hand over now to Hans to talk to us about the new data analytics strategy. Over to you, Hans.
Thank you, Dan. I've seen quite a lot of analytic projects over time, and they give me a feeling of deja vu. That feeling of deja vu is depicted by this cartoon, which you probably have seen if you were around in the project business, especially in the IT business for a long time, where you see the problem of getting the actual requirements from your customer all the way through the project to something that is delivered and might resemble or might not resemble what your customer was asking for. Getting your exact requirements is an art. Yeah? As an answer to that, organizations said, okay, let's throw technology against it. Let's standardize on that. Let's have one, for instance, data lake or one analytic suite, and that will resolve everything. But the requirements, in this case, the assortment of nails and bolts and whatever, and hooks from your business processes are so different that one size fits all, or in this case, one hammer fits all, will not work. You need, for some specific requirements, different solutions. Well, how to address this? We take an image here on two opposite sides of how you could achieve it. To the left, you see the image of the bricklayer, the artisan who constructs a custom building in this situation from specs that were drawn up, or blueprints, or permits that you got from the government. You need the labor time of the artisan. You need the material, and then you wait until your building is ready to move into. To the other side, we have the example of WeWork, where you rent office space. So you find one day that you need some office space, you define the size, for what period, what additional services, a kitchen corner, or stuff you want to have. The cables are there already, and you go for it as long as you need it. So two opposites of approaching a solution. And we have seen that before, especially in the ERP realm. I'm going back some time, and I know that when I started, building your application was the standard, and I think that that was true until 1919 or so. After that, it was we have build options. There are ERPs coming out, so we have a choice. And by I think 2000, it was turned around. Buy before you're built, and nobody would think straight away of building an ERP-like application nowadays. This history, this story continues. We see this hub and spoke model coming up, as Dan described, where you have a central core ERP with all kinds of surrounding specialized system holding parts or copies or versions of the data that are talking to each other and handing it over as the process evolves. Typically, you would see that all of these have a bi-mode preference, and only very specific, unique things will still be built, or sometimes there is some legacy which was built which you can't get rid of. Hopefully, this time, as I said with a little smile, we avoid that we customize the hell out of this hub and spoke model again, but can we resolve our needs by just configuring? That saves a lot of money for our maintenance. Also, Gartner looks at this hub and spoke model, but from an architectural point of view, where they say we have to move to the composable architecture, where we have changes in the organization all the time, changes that need different technologies, different versions, different developments. Let's create an architecture where we can combine those capabilities and glue them together with minimal effort and interchange them if and when needed, but always with the idea that you optimize your support for the business needs at that point in time. From this thinking, we have put this image together where we say there is a 4-quadrant model that you should apply to your analytic strategies. From the top left, if it is really a topic of strategic advantage, which is unique, which helps you to improve your business, you might want to invest, and maybe you must even invest in the execution capabilities to build analytic capabilities around that. At the other hand, to the lower right corner, if the analytic function that you need to deliver is not unique, is common, is interchangeable to a large extent between organizations, and you need it quickly, then you certainly should think about buying, because it's quicker and the cost sensitivity is, of course, much more clearer upfront. So if you can afford to invest enough and it is unique enough, absolutely build. If it is common and you need a quick and relatively cheap solution, go for buy. Partnering is the section in between where you say, it's another way to get there. You could say it's a hybrid element where you use partner components to configure it in a unique way that suits you best. Bringing back this Artisan versus this rent and office model, essentially what we trying to do with a buying solution for analytics is to combine the Artisan knowledge with the ready-to-use capability of the rent and office. And that's a canned solution, which is also addressing multiple perspectives. So anything from performance reporting to prediction, behavioral trends, leading indicators, etc., so that all this embedded process knowledge and best practice out of this can be used by many management persons in an organization. If we bring that now back to our 4-quadrant model, these are the typical examples here which you would build and which you would buy. So customer behavior, customer experience, product behavior, competitive analysis. Those things are unique for your offering for your business and could really help to grow your business exponentially. Whereby order to cash, source to pay, record to report, and hire to retire are far from unique and show an overlap of 90% or so in most companies, where you could really think about going for a buying solution. And then in between the partner ones, if you want to do demand generation, for instance, in a network, sales enablement, product development, where you have multiple partners and elements involved, a partnership relationship makes more sense. if you go for a buy analytic solution, you need to apply some special design paradigms. So delivery disruption, no code, no config, no project, process awareness, best practice included. In fact, the necessity to find any requirements completely already included, available in hours or in days, no training. And to the right, continuous crowdsourced intelligence, whereby the solution, the analytic solution, grows over time, matures further over time. As a result, I'm bringing back the value, the time to value graph that Dan showed us. You can just point where your ready to run analytics app can deliver value, and the same for a custom built BI or analytics solution. And we did some research, and other organizations did quite some research. And what we found is that the cost comparison between build versus buy for a lookalike analytic is 5-to-1 in the initial cost and 2-to-1 in the recurring costs. And the time to value comparison between build and buy is 8-to-1 time-wise. So a buy solution is 8 times quicker delivered and giving value than a build one. And to summarize that, a buy application solution is an excellent example of a Pareto thinking solution. So in summary, you could say it's a 1-2-3. You get 80% of plus of your required value in the terms of the functionality needed for business improvement activities. For number 2, 20% of the costs compared to building it yourself. And the best thing about it, you get it now. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you. That is a very compelling discussion around the build versus buy quadrant and why we need to get there. So I'm just coming into some thoughts for the road now. If you have questions, and I'm sure you do, please pop them into the system. And I've got some observations coming in here, and we'll answer your questions. So we, our team here have been deep into this. I mentioned about the AI team and the analytics team and this building the analytic apps. We've got a lot of battle scars from this. We are kind of, as a group, you can probably just tell by looking at Hans and myself, we're kind of naturally, we've got healthy skepticism, and we distrust hype when we see it, because usually there's a curve that goes after that. And this, addressing the oversimplification of the problem. This is a Dunning-Kruger issue. Try to validate everything with common sense, and we've had to do this ourselves as well. And none of us are immune from this. Differentiating correlation with causation. We've spent a lot of discussions on that internally. Being very aware of unintended consequences. When you do something and you take a certain route, what's the impact? What's the impact you weren't expecting? But one thing is so clear, is this idea of rapid time to value is critically important. Not only does it mean we get business value, the economic value quickly, it also ensures alignment with evolving business priorities, and that's been a massive impact and reflects on some of the statistics that Hans shared. So I think the point here is that when you're trying to achieve substantially different results to what you've done in the past, you have to kind of move on from received wisdom. You can't keep doing the same things and expecting different results, because that's the definition of madness. So we've got to think about how we're going to change the game, and Hans has described that. And I think we're not saying that everything should go buy, but what we are saying is you should have that quadrant and work out where are the buy options to help focus our valuable resources on stuff that's more strategically key to us. So this really gives us this idea of helping to accelerate innovation, and we're certainly seeing this with this work. So when you think about now analytics, this topology, on the left-hand side, we've got some great technologies for building stuff, and that's very valuable, particularly for those strategic top left-hand quadrant topics. We've also got some great options for buy. Now you can buy as a service, so you can get people to basically build it for you and run it for you. You've got the embedded analytics, customizable components idea, but our focus is on this ready-to-run business application with crowdsourced business expertise, best practice, KPIs, the whole thing. And we're seeing a massive both time to value and impact in that. So, there was a saying by Christopher Columbus, I believe. I'm sure he didn't say it this way. I don't think he spoke English. But you can't cross the ocean until you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. What's interesting about this build versus buy model, it means we can cross the ocean and keep sight on the shore because we can do things in parallel. If we're concerned about it and want to prove it, we can prove it. But the evidence is for those core internal processes, this is a very, very powerful option. So that's what we've talked through. I hope you found it useful. We are going to take a few questions. We're actually at 35 minutes. I said it would take 35, but I hope I get a couple of questions in first. So let us just take a couple of your questions now. If you've got any more questions, you probably want to send them by email. Let's see what we've got here. So, right, we've got a few. Let me choose. Right. Okay. We have a question here. We have process analytics to come with some of our new applications, such as P2P suites. Why would I need an extra analytics app? Very fair question. So thank you for that. I think our experience has been more and more applications now, particularly the cloud apps, come with embedded analytics. But those analytics provided by those applications, the analytics focus only on the data in the scope of the application, not the end-to-end process. And the key thing is the end-to-end process. And there's often gaps in the visibility. So, for example, in a P2P suite, you only get visibility of the data that flows through that. And even in with the best will in the world, not all purchases flow through it. There's lots of good reasons why some don't. And in the transition, that there's a lot of need to get a view of the total universe of data. So, that's pretty key. And then there's a lot of sort of technical algorithmic issues about that as well. But that's kind of my view. Hans, you got a comment on that?
Yeah, I think that it is always underestimated what happens with the data in the end-to-end process. And of course, the suites are good and looking to the part of the process that they can govern and that they can see. But we all know that, especially in those hub and spoke models, data is moved over between the various applications, and to have really an end-to-end view is crucial.
Yeah, so you need to have analytics to understand the changes in the state of that data between, for example, a P2P suite and the ERP or the payments or whatever. Okay, yep. I get that. Another question here. You indicate that a buy option for an analytic app can show value in days. Is this realistic? Hans, do you want to give that a go?
Yeah, that's a good question. Seeing is believing. Yes, if it's a genuine application, which is ready to run, there is a minimal effort to install it, hours, and zero effort to configure it. The real problem is what does take time is to get approval from all the involved stakeholders to allow this happening, so that the data is consumed by the analytic app. And you can think about governance and security teams and technology teams that might have an opinion because they are very deeply involved with the build technology, the build enabling technology. So the process of getting there to install it is the more complex one and the longer duration. Once you get the approvals and the access, installing the application and getting the value out of it is indeed a matter of hours or maximum a few days.
Okay, thank you, Hans. I'm conscious that I did say it'd be 35 minutes, with 39 minutes. So we're going to deal with the rest of your questions by email. Thank you so much. If you're interested in being part of either benefiting from this crowdsourced process analytics or contributing to the crowdsourcing, let us know. Just before you go, we've been doing this in recent webcasts. It's a very powerful way of representing your collective opinions back to the community. So I want you just to think about a few words, not an essay, but a few words. What, in your view and experience, is the single biggest barrier to accelerating the speed of actionable data insight for core business processes today, which is a topic we're talking about. What's the biggest barrier to getting it fast? So in a few seconds, we're going to close down the webcast. You're going to see this panel pop up. You're going to hit close, and then you're going to see this question come up. If you could just put in a few questions there, preferably, as I say, we're going to turn this into a word cloud. So keep, just bullet points is really helpful. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd appreciate it. It'd be good for you to see what the collective opinion of the group is. We thank you for your time, really appreciate it. And I hope you found it thought-provoking. So thank you all, and speak to you soon.